All right, I'm finally here. I'm here. Hold on one second. I've got to make sure this thing works and isn't broken. And then I'll flip this switch. Oh, yes. Okay. All right. I think so. Could be ready. Let's see if this actually works. Hold on a second. 3, 2, something. Hey, look at that. Welcome to Mondays. It's a bright, shining day. How are you? Good to see you. Good morning. What's going on? I'm going to be building this show as we go because I created this new Monday set for us, and I'm just weird like that. I'm just weird like that. It's just how it works. And so yeah, you guys can hear me though. Okay, now I haven't broken anything else while trying to fix it. Hi, welcome to House Sparks Mornings Megaworldwide. Tara will be Tara Dublin Rocks for those on the shitter or the site, not the. I don't know where you watch the show, quite frankly, and I don't care. I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum, and I just I'm glad you're regular. I suppose speaking of regulars, hold on one second. Um, Sunday, Monday, Sunday. All right. Let's take a look at our lovely chat room real quick. That's fantastic. And let me. I'm also going to, while I'm doing it anyways. If you know what I'm saying, and you don't. Um, Good to see you. Hi. How are you? Am I running the new rig yet? No, I'm building things on the new rig, but we haven't moved it over to here yet because that's the heavy lifting. I have to. Yeah, it's a lot. And I've been working way too much to do that one final step, which requires a lot of wiring. Just saying. And a lot of mounting. That's your idea of a good time. And I think that it is. That's why I have things like this that I have to attach to the ceiling for lighting things and stuff. I have 4 of those. It's going to be an endeavor. I'm going to be up on a step ladder making a complete ass of myself for the next couple of days. But we are making today's shirt is the Strategic Scientific Reserves. It's one of the not quites. The only vermin is that orange pinata, motherfucker. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. You're not well. I was about to say you're not wrong, but there's quite a bit of vermin out there. Just saying. I wouldn't worry too much. That said, let me see if I can bring. I'm gonna have to bring up the other news thing. Hold on, I'm gonna jump in here and grab this thing and drag it down here. There we go. We're all good. So much silliness. Don Jr. is of course testifying on behalf of his dad now. Also the 10 in California and LA. There was a huge homeless fire encampment thing underneath one of the overpasses, so it's shut down, which is why you have a structured society and why you set up actual services for homeless people and why you don't just let drug tourists posing as homeless people live in and amongst them and take advantage of them and victimize them as well. There's just a lot of yeah. Don. Oh yes, and Marianne Trump Barry, Trump's sister, passed away. Which is very strange because he almost never talks about his own kids, much less his siblings, and I don't know if that was just like in general an agreement amongst them, right, or something. It was a big pile of pallets and a bunch of cars, and it started more than likely at one of the homeless encampments. But the question also is, did it start because of something they were doing there? Because there's a lot of cooking going on there, and not necessarily food. And there's also, I would say, an element of Breaking Bad style cooking that may have. All right. So also, I can't even give it away yet, but there's going to be some major sexy liberal tour news, by the way, in the positive, as far as the dates and the places and the things and the Yes, very exciting. Just got a tip about that this morning. Super excited that that's going to be a thing. But yes, Trump has had a sister and an older brother. Both of them have passed. Um, he, I want to say he's the youngest. Was he? Yeah, he was the youngest. Um, there is a, let's see. Well, we'll see. Yeah, CVS just pulled many popular cold medicines from store shelves: Dayquil, Mucinex, Sudafed, Theraflu, and others because, according to the FDA, phenylephrine is an ineffective treatment of cold symptoms. Is okay, whatever. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So there, it is trending that Marianne Trump Barry has passed away. Um, and JoJo from Jers is saying she famously told her niece Mary Trump that her younger brother had someone take his SATs for him, and she also said this: "It's the phoniness of it all. It's the phoniness and this cruelty. Donald is cruel," which is what his mom said about him. Like, she effectively was like, "She's, we're raising a monster," and she knew it. She was, yeah, she died in her Upper East Side Manhattan apartment. She was discovered this morning at 4 a.m. Um, yeah, so, condolences to the family. In all seriousness, her extended family, to Mary Trump, to everybody who might have known and been around her, uh, everybody's writing on the interwebs what like Trump's relatives said about him, which was basically like, he was a brat. I did his homework for him. I drove him around New York City to try and get him into college. He went to Fordham for 1 year, and then he got into the University of Pennsylvania because he had somebody take the exams. This is, by the way, one of the reasons this story, and it's there's no reason to believe it isn't true because he's just an idiot. But so much of this. Hold on, let's see if I can make this happen while I'm talking. So much of this, these stories about him, you can tell how true they are. I think more than the details of whether or not they're secondhand or any of that stuff, which some people seem concerned about. You can tell which ones are true by which ones he either mocks or vilifies other people for similar behaviors outwardly in the press, as if he's doing an end run around the story coming out. Like, he'll make fun of Obama's, where's Obama's college records and all this other stuff, just in case his come out. Everybody else is an affirmative action hire or didn't deserve it or cheated to get in, all that kind of stuff. He always brings those things. You can tell which ones are true, specifically true, and that he's nervous about by how he attacks other people. It's pretty hilarious. That said, again, condolences to the fam. It doesn't really, I mean, it's odd for one of these stories, because like Don Jr., that's his aunt. He's testifying today. On a human level, like, even still, as weird as these people are, I still, I still feel for anybody who's in that situation. It's just a thing. Hold on one second. I'm fixing one thing, and then I'll jump over and change screens again, because let's see, chroma key. I think that'll work. Okay. Green close. Now we'll see. This might suck, but give me a second. Oh yeah, it's not bad. I'm just behind it. That doesn't work half bad. Hold on one second. Or is that just me behind there? Hold on. Where would it go? Oh, I see. I can't change it without being in the studio mode. Hi. Just assume I'm there. That's the important thing. Beep, 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 beep. There I am. And then I don't. Oh, I see. This is because it's offset by the thingy. I get you. Let's see the iDisplay, which whoop. Oh yeah, and that's got to be turned off as well. I think that's more of it. Yeah, there we go. This will be my Monday set, so I'm working on it. Just trying to. I literally had to go through stuff there. I was like, what can cut me out more? Yeah, it's a bit of watch out for the solar flare. I am concerned. So anyways, there you guys are, and that's much better, I think. Hold on, I can shuffle things around and make it a little more palatable to my own eye. Again, I'll make one of these for when we have, get in here, you silly. There it is. And yeah, cool. Flaming ball of gas. Well, I think it's appropriate considering, who we have to deal with most of the time. I cleaned up my desk and moved my thing out of the way. You know what I'm talking about? And piece by piece, I'm trying to make what little changes I can as we do, so we can distinguish our shows from shows. So this will be Monday for the time being, until I figure out something even weirder. Um, so let's see, and I'll have to build a screen and put Tara in this box. What in a minute? Yes. When is it? Not Monday today? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's go back to here. And here, back to this thing. There's a trend. So yeah, the I-10 thing. I'll see if I can find a picture of it for you guys. It's a bit weird. Both directions, downtown LA between Alameda and East LA interchange. Caltrans assessing the damage from a fire under the I-10 will reopen as soon as possible. In the meantime, use other routes. There's the that's not good. Yeah. Yeah, a homeless campfire under downtown LA bridge weakened support columns, causing closure both directions. Yeah, it's anyway, let's see if I can show you this guy. Go back to this guy. There it is. Yeah, not particularly good. Just saying. Yeah, they burned the columns. That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of cookery. Now, granted, that's the concrete casing outside of it, but it was a very hot fire, so set a bunch of other shit on fire as well. Not particularly good. Okay, that said, let me go back to you guys, and then I want to, once I affix my strange little video image to this, I'll just make a duplicate of this guy. No, I won't. That'll be a pain in the ass. I'll just do what I was going to do. The turn off the trend smoke. Okay. The issue that you'll often find with those kind of stories is, chicken and egg, blaming it, whatever, blah blah blah. The truth is that section of the 10 needs work anyways. The fact that a regular fire under it could cause this level of damage, the idea that there's storage and homeless camps and all kinds of other stuff under there is just ridiculous. There's also a lot of I don't know, substructure supports that have been there since the earthquake damage that, they're like, oh, we'll fix it later, but they just support it sort of slapdash during it. It worked, but it won't survive a kind of fire like this. So it just makes sense that they'll be able to fix it. And Buttigieg is sending people down there, which means if they initially assess it'll take 8 months to finish it, they'll do it in 2. But it's I gotta say it's not particularly fun when anything doesn't work in the hold on, background start in, no, I don't want that one. The heck is that one called? What I call it? I would rename it like an idiot. Okay. I'll just drag another one in because I'm silly. Always making the thing. All right, we go up to here. Do the same things I had to do all over again. Add the filters and the chroma key thing, and that works okay. And click and okay, and then make it loop. And there we go. And then we'll go to. I have a bunch of news stories today that I have to get to before Tara gets on because there's so much shit happening, and there's just no way I'm going to be able to get through all of it. But whatever. Did that open up? It did. Okay, good. So let's just take this guy, which is doing a lot of things. We'll move it down below me, and then transition to. Did it work? Yeah, it kind of worked. I just have to turn off the other thing and then turn off the other thing and move the other thing. So let's see, turn off studio mode. There we go. Let's see, it's this monitor. There we go. Excellent. So so that doesn't look good. I'm just saying in general, not particularly helpful, folks. That said, why am I bigger all of a sudden? What's happening? How did I increase in girth as well as size? Chuck. Sorry, let me shrink myself back down. There you go. Now I'm reasonable size. Now the number of news stories I gathered this morning are a bit ridiculous. So forgive me if I'm you know blazing through this goddamn thing because it was um, in between. There's a bunch of different. Um, open up, you crazy thing. I'm waiting for my Notion to open up. Which I don't know why it wouldn't. It's very strange. Opening up, doing the story. Why won't you open up? Open. Just thinking about it? Okay. Well, then, good. I get to go through, try to recreate all my stories from scratch. That's fun. Um, good morning. Hi. How you doing, everybody? Good to see you. Yeah. Well, the pallets were the storage elements of the pallets. It's basically like construction material for the homeless people that are building like semi-permanent structures in that area. Sorry. Let me scroll ahead and catch up with you guys because I'm way behind on the chat. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hi, Doc. Hello, Pisces greeter. Hello. Good morning again. Good morning. Hey, Mark. That's some serious fire damage. Definitely looks chemical and grossly chemical in nature. Yeah, I mean it's a cascading thing because there's so much storage and crap under there and God knows what. So, what I think about Netanyahu, I think he's a terrible leader at a terrible time. It's interesting to me that this is one of the lessons that I think the quote unquote left of wherever never seems to learn, which is get your shit together, stop backbiting when it comes to people like Trump and Netanyahu. You don't game around and go, well, maybe I should, maybe a coalition built on blah blah blah. Like if you're talking about if you're watering down your vote in the face of that, you're just handing it over to them. And the Hamases and the Russias of the world will take advantage of that. They're looking forward to you ceding a mandate and dissipating your strength. Why the fuck do you think they have Jill Stein running again? Yeah. Netanyahu's an asshole, but he's elected by this kind of coalition watering down system. This like kind of like the sort of namby-pamby side of what would be their liberal side is what allowed him to hold on to the power that he has. And then as soon as he got in, what did he do? He tried to destroy the judicial system there to stop them from going after his corruption, just like Trump, and to guarantee his ability to stay in power, just like Trump. And while that's happening, while people are on their heels about I don't like my government right now, which translates very easily into I don't like my country, which is fucking dumb, but it happens all the time. The people, the murderous, the murderous and the most violent and the most evil people in the world just start rubbing their hands together and going, "This is our shot." This is one of those situations where, as it were, peace leads to more war. This is when people like you get in a situation where, oh, there it is. Okay, it is open. Where are you? There you go. Okay. Yay, my screen opened. Okay, so now I can open this. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, lots of news today. I wish there was a way in this, in my morning's show thing 11 Wednesday. That's not what I want. Where did it go? Where did you go? I'll just do a search for it because that's what I do. Whoops. 13. 1, 13. Monday, 11/13. There we go. Okay, cool. So, a couple of things, big pieces of news. And I'll start opening these up. There are a couple of major stories I want to talk about today, and welcome and hi, and thank you guys for gathering, and pardon my kerfuffling before I lead to this, because there's just a lot to deal with. One is what I would call Memo Gate. Let's get to that right away. So, if you don't know, there's this like asshole storyline going around. Get open, you silly. Yeah, there we go. That's the wrong one. In the wrong one. I'll do this articles, which is you guys. And I'll drag this down here. You can see it a little better. So if I may, there you go. So this is how the story started out this morning. Internal State Department memo blasts Biden U.S. policy on Israel-Hamas war. Okay, this is how the story starts. This is how you start getting the tale of this. I'll do it. Another one. There's another version of it that, like, again, we're entering into the first place I saw it actually was on the Daily Beast this morning. Yes, stick out your finger and poke the like button. Give a thumbs up, support the show, spread the show around, help us stay on the air. All the things I'm supposed to say and don't. Venmo, etc., etc., etc. Now, I saw this morning, and I don't know if anybody saw this nonsense, but someone wrote a memo, and a bunch of people signed it in the State Department, accusing like Biden of spreading misinformation and blah 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 about Hamas and Israel and all that kind of stuff. Now, the dissent memo isn't an odd thing. It's more odd during the Trump years, but having dissent memos and that kind of stuff, both in the DOD and the State Department, is kind of part and parcel to how it works. There's a regular order of those things. You want multiple opinions of things. You want them floating around. You want a diverse cabinet. It's what Obama was really good at. Thanks. I appreciate that, Eileen, for noting that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, right. This one, is slightly different in that it's the first one in a while to get as much attention. And it's not surprising why it got as much attention, but it's pretty shocking, like how what the person who wrote it says and the people signing on to it say, which is State Department employee accuses Biden of genocide amid calls for a Gaza ceasefire. Okay, this is the person this woman who arranged the dissent cable has been tweeting nonstop that with all Blinken and Biden trying to mitigate what Israel's doing, we don't have control over them, but we can replenish their Iron Dome so they don't get hit while we try to use that measure to talk them into humanitarian pauses and a humanitarian corridor so people can get out, all that kind of stuff. Super important. But you've got a lot of what I would call the Rashida Tlaib like pro-Hamas crowd. And I mean pro-Hamas directly. Because there is a pro-Palestinian idea, which I support, and I think a lot of people in the chat support, which is a two-state solution, Palestinian autonomy, integration of both societies into, open borders between the two of them, and more sort of Arabs and Jews and Christians getting along in that area. I think that's where we all want it to go. Okay. Then there are the river to the sea crowd, which, if you pin them down, will say Israel doesn't have a right to exist. It's an apartheid state, a colonist state, blah, blah, blah. Never mind the fact that Jews have been driven out of every Arab country in the surrounding area into Israel as Israel has been formed, and the idea from all of them is to wipe Israel out eventually, which is basically like let's turn Israel into the sort of Lebanese, Syrian, and to some degree on a minor level the Egyptians, although they're kind of busy with other shit these days. But since the Sinai, since the 6-Day War and all that kind of stuff, they've kind of checked this a little. But the Islamist Arabs that are in that area feel this way. The idea is that turn Israel into an Auschwitz and then push them to and murder them, push them to the sea. From the river to the sea is not just the direction, like the space, like we want the land from here to here. It's from the river, push the Jews into the sea. Okay. So don't kid yourself that the people who are saying that shit are somehow for peace or believe in a two-state solution, anything like that. They're overlapping language about other shit that they either are ignorant about. That's the best thing you can say about them. Or they then just fucking they want the Jews to die. And Best and Great says, doesn't it go both ways? No, it doesn't. There is no point where a majority of or the focus of Israel has been anything other than to exist since the late 70s, especially. That's why the West Bank and Gaza still exist. Remember, West Bank is just an extension of Lebanon. The Lebanese just keep the fucking Palestinians out of there because they don't like them either. It's very weird. There are two sets of ghettoizations going on in Israel and like Gaza and the West Bank. You've got two groups that the surrounding Arab countries are just saying fuck off. And they're just, sort of enjoying them fighting it out, right? Yeah, in Jordan, right. So again, using a word when you don't know the definition of apartheid. Yes, apartheid, it is not an apartheid state. It's apartheid state would be inside of it, like inside Israel. Arabs and Christians and people who live there, because they're not just Jews living in Israel, they all have voting rights as well. In an apartheid state, you wouldn't. The Gaza and the West Bank are controlled by Palestinians, and they have their own elected governments. That's the difference between it being an apartheid state. It's just an overlapping word. People are borrowing old words from like the 80s to try and like dig up shitty emotions about it. So yes, it's an argument about the semantics matter because you have to solve for the problem that's actually there. There is no apartheid state, therefore you cannot eliminate apartheid in that area. It just doesn't it doesn't overlap. You're not going to create, there's not going to be coalition. I'll give you an example. There will not be anytime soon in Gaza or the West Bank a coalition government of Jews and Christians and Arabs. Does that make sense? There will not be. The Palestinians wouldn't allow it. Certainly Hamas doesn't want it, but the PLO, the Islamic Jihad, no, that's not going to happen. When you talk about like South Africa as an apartheid state, this is a singular area, the entire country, and then everybody had a say in the government and nobody got boxed out anymore, essentially, after the end of apartheid. It matters because, and again, it's like the language around 9/11 when they're talking about like, this is Israel's 9/11, using that as an example. Now, as an example of a pivot point where you would say this was the big thing that changed their policy towards this threat that exists, and it's a potential where they could do it well or go, fight a war in Iraq style. The concern that comes from that is valid. And that as quote unquote, it's 9/11, it works. There's a huge difference though between America and 9/11 and Israel and October 7th in that on 9/11 in the United States, 19 or so Saudis and others came over here from across the fucking ocean and engaged in this act of terrorism and had no backup. There was not another group of people, 18 miles away that could come thundering across a border. It's just different. It's just not, that analogy doesn't work. Mark, no, I'm not. I appreciate you, but I feel like a lot of people have had their empathy weaponized and are somehow in this babies are enemy combatants zone, and it's nonsense. Stop it. It's not humanitarian. It's not going to lead to a two-state solution or peace in any way. It's a way to ratchet up war and murder, and it's absurd. And Hamas plays into that. Russia's been dumping shit onto the internet, getting people to, baited into this thought form where all things are equal. It's nonsense. We're talking about words that define war crimes. Yeah, I agree. What if the Native Americans gained some strange amount of power, decided to take back America? Which ones? They would have to work together. And again, this kind of that analogy, chat room, that analogy works kind of well for the perception of Palestinians as Arabs in this area. The idea that the leaders of Hamas don't even live there; they live in Qatar, or other places. They have siphoned off a lot of money. They're very wealthy. They don't live in Gaza or in the West Bank. The other thing is, you could argue that Islamic Jihad, the people that are, the group of Islamic Jihad, not only don't represent the Palestinian people, but aren't themselves by any measure Palestinian. You know what I mean? Like they feed in there through other countries and build this substructure of terrorism because they have a fight with the Jews that they want to carry out on the backs of the Palestinians. That's why there's an interesting thing about like the conversation about Hamas using quote unquote their own people as human shields. Well, there's no indication that I've seen that the vast majority of the Hamas leadership are anything other than Arab jihadists that are, Muslim and it's not like they grew up on the native land of Gaza and decided to do this. Most of them are outsiders essentially stoking this shit. So Hamas doesn't have, it's one of the things like when you hear this idea that they use their own people as human shields, most often they don't view the Palestinians as their own people. If you look at the outside Arab countries, for example, one of the things about the outside Arab countries not allowing the Palestinians to, migrate there or build up sort of homes and industry there, and they're kind of compartmentalizing them into that, is because they don't view them as their own people. And they certainly don't in terms of these fights. Hamas and Islamic Jihad, that crowd, you could argue that they aren't really Palestinian. I'm sure they're intermixed. I'm sure there's enough radicalism in there that's where they farm from, right? Okay. So anyways, let's go back to this story from the lovely folks over at the State Department. So this story came up because somebody, wrote this memo that says we disagree. Yeah, here it goes. This is another version of it. One second. I think this is the same one. Yeah. Okay. So that's the same one from the Daily Beast. One second. This is, here. Okay. So Axios does the same thing. Here you go. Scoop. This is where it came from. And I think Daily Beast actually referenced this story. So this is what you would call a bounce story. It starts in one area, everybody refers to it, and then there's another paragraph they add to the story to make it their own while still going, that's their story. None of it, for the most part, even in the case of the Daily Beast, which is just a blurb, is based on new information or added information per se. Okay, but this is the story that came out. An internal State Department dissent memo accused President Biden of spreading misinformation on the Israel-Hamas war and alleges that Israel is committing, quote, war crimes in Gaza, according to a copy of the memo obtained by Axios. Why it matters. A scathing 5-page memo organized by a junior diplomat who has suggested on social media that Biden's support of Israel has made him complicit in genocide in Gaza offers a rare look at the raw divisions within the Biden administration over the Israel-Hamas war. Now, I would actually say this has more to do with the coalition of 2020 than it has to do with sort of dissent within the administration. Because if you'll recall, when Biden made his deal with kind of the Bernie crowd and incorporated a bunch of what they wanted and who they were into his administration, and he started just giving roles in the government to some of these folks to try and, like incorporate their beliefs and all that kind of stuff into the argument, into the conversation. This is exactly what it was sort of lining up to do, and not necessarily in a bad way. Again, you want people to push back, yes, but a junior diplomat is exactly somebody who would effectively be one of the tip of the hat to the Bernie crowd to give them a role in it, right? Okay. So there's that's the back channel activity in the State Department it's seen during Trump's presidency since, and they also warred with Fatah. Yes, there's tons of stuff in there. Okay, the memo signed by 100 State Department USAID employees, which is interesting because that's an important distinction. Like they just kind of don't. because it could be 8 State Department employees and, 92 USAID employees, but whatever. Urges the senior U.S. officials to reassess their policy towards Israel and demand a ceasefire in Gaza. Okay, a ceasefire in Gaza is effectively, in this circumstance, I am fascinated that none of these folks asked for, quote unquote, a ceasefire on October 7th. Nobody rushed to, none of this, and this person in particular who tweeted this stuff and has been talking about this, didn't rush to her Twitter feed on October 7th and go, this has to stop. These are innocent civilians. This is not helpful. She didn't do that. Right? Which is something to keep in mind, right? That's like, yeah. I'm not saying no one did. I'm saying this person and the what I would call the faux-aggressive stuff. No, I saw a lot of people do it interpersonally. I mean, this person and the people that we're talking about in this case. Now, sometimes people like to watch things burn. I agree. Daily 4-hour ceasefire, huh? Where are the daily 4-hour ceasefires in Ukraine? Well, that's like saying, why does the rape victim, why won't she stop scratching me so I can reload my gun? That's the issue here. So some of the memo's language echoes that of progressive activists in the U.S. whose anger and protests over Biden's handling of the war have rippled through the Democratic Party and create a new challenge for the president's 2024 campaign. No. For every one member of the sort of faux-aggressive pro-Hamas crowd that's stomping around yelling, you're gaining 3 independents. And by the way, anybody who actually believes what this person is saying, who actually, wants a 2-state solution or believes that Israel is engaged in war crimes or what have you, if you don't think Donald Trump will just ignore it and cut them off the leash, the idea that that Biden and Blinken have both been playing like bad cop at the same time with Netanyahu to get him using, carrot and stick approaches to have these humanitarian ceasefires and or pauses, whatever you want to call them, and the corridor, that's gone under Trump. That's just gone. Again, I bring you back to the death toll of civilian deaths with drone strikes under the Trump administration. If you'll recall, it was up 80% in the first year. And 8 times, that's why it was almost like, a 10-to-1 nature of this, but there were 80 more civilian deaths in the first year than there were in the entirety, 80% more civilian deaths from drone strikes during the first year of the Trump administration than there were in the 8 years of the Obama administration. Because Trump came in and said, fuck it, let him kill. That's why he thinks he beat ISIS in 4 weeks. What was taking so long? Well, we're trying not to hit civilians. Trump's answer was, fuck them. So if you think somehow that Trump's pissing contest with Netanyahu is somehow going to be enough to get him to not support Israel, like carpet bombing Gaza, you're insane. Or you want it, I guess. Maybe this is what sparks the rapture. Who gives a shit? Maybe that's the attitude. But there you go. Without offering a specific example, the memo accuses Biden of spreading misinformation in his October 10th speech, which is, I think they're pushing about the hospital, which he turned out to be right, or the beheading of babies versus them being hacked to death. So you got somewhere in the order of like 40 babies that were just chopped up. And there's some people like this person making a semantic argument online. They didn't behead the babies. They just chopped them to pieces. As if beheading is like a religious thing and the chopping up is just whatever. It's silly. Like that pissing contest is so gross. The memo also said that we strongly recommend the U.S. government advocate for the release of hostages by both Hamas and Israel. Okay, now, citing thousands of Palestinians being held in Israel, including those without charge. Okay, the idea that anybody who committed a terrorist act or was supporting terrorism or whatever that Israel has in there exists at least the rule of law and imprisonment, and the international community can talk about that, and they're at least being kept in humane conditions. The hostages that Hamas has are either dead already or they're in tunnels, um, you know, being either abused or waiting to die or waiting to be used as leverage. I mean, nobody even, it's just silly. Like, that's the comparison between calling them hostages is, I mean, it sounds like the language that Rutger Hauer used in Nighthawks, or somebody, yeah. So that really happened. My down sounds like Warhawk propaganda. Which part? What really happened? Yes, it did. There's footage that Hamas released on their Telegram channels. I mean, again, I don't recommend this for anybody, but you can see it because they were proud of it. It's not a matter of, the Israelis released this everywhere. No, all the footage was released by Hamas on the Hamas Telegram channels. They were celebrating it. So, yeah. Anyways, point is, Biden has backed Israel's response while expressing concern about humanitarian issues in Gaza, but the memo says Biden should do more to question Israel's actions, which, again, this is just like namby-pamby weird stuff that's supposed to walk things back, as if they're not doing both at the same time. Yeah, avoiding Telegram is not a bad idea. It's pretty fucking awful. I mean, yeah. I remember when, remember when the video, Faces of Death was circulating and had 8 vignettes on this tape of people dying in all kinds of weird ways and, being eaten by an alligator or whatever the shit. Yeah, that's Telegram is basically like Faces of Death, the series. It's housed in its main servers are in Russia. It's owned by a Russian company. Its purpose in a lot of ways is to make money off the back of awful in the world, while at the same time manipulating the awful at the same time. So I would not recommend anybody take anything they see there at face value. It is one of those things where it's kind of like the edge of the dark web is the best I can describe it. The dark web being a place where it's murky and bullshit, and you don't know if you're halfway in between somebody really doing something awful or selling something awful or participating in something awful, or a law enforcement agency trying to bait those people out. You know what I mean? So it's a mix of that shit all the time. Yeah. It's rough. So sounds like the underbelly of social media. Well, I would argue it's far below that. The X is the underbelly. So the memo states, yet we have failed to reassess our posture towards Israel. That's where you get into what this person's really talking about. We doubled down on our unwavering military assistance to the Israeli government without clear or actionable red lines. No, we didn't. We didn't double down on our unwavering military assistance. We just restated it. We didn't double our military support. We didn't give them other shit. We don't have the warships in the region that are, dealing with Syria and other stuff like that. They're not parked off of fucking Gaza, firing into Gaza with them. It's stupid. And this is, again, there are problems with what's going on in Israel and Hamas, that battle right now, and there's support that is needed for the Palestinian people who are trying to evacuate, medical assistance, food assistance, all that shit. You will never get it this way, because they're lying about the structure, so nobody's going to pay any deep attention to it. It's going to get blown off. This will be a story for 24 hours and then it will go away, because it's effectively a bunch of tweets from a bunch of co-angry people that aren't interested in the depth of it. They picked a side and they're sticking to it. Just telling you. Again, this isn't even about whether I like something or not. This is just the truth of the matter in regard to. Okay, so the memo also criticized Biden for, quote, questioning the number of deaths in Gaza. Okay, materially, the number of deaths in Gaza has been a manipulated figure. You can tell from the footage and from the pictures that Hamas themselves puts out. And I think the best example is the parking lot of the hospital shot, where there are a few dozen cars blown up. There is no crater in the ground, but there are certainly, considering it happened moments before, not 300 dead people blown to pieces all around. They just don't exist. That's just the reality of it. They do that, and then what happens is you take that, you run with it. It's unverified. It's the same thing with like Chinese. It's the same thing we deal with Chinese COVID numbers. There's no way China has lost fewer than 17 million people from COVID. There's no way. That's the minimum statistical amount. Like I said, the year that I left China right before COVID broke out, like they were already losing phone numbers. Like people, because everybody pays with they pay their bills with their cell phone using WeChat. So it's basically like your ID, and 20 million phones disappeared, just went dead in the first year of COVID. And nobody chucks that any more than like, can you imagine if you said in the United States, like 340 million people, that, I don't know, 10 million people just decided to shred their passports and their IDs and live off the grid. That's the equivalent. It's absurd. So anyways, October 27th, Biden said he had no confidence in the figures provided by the health ministry of Gaza. Yeah, the funny thing is like, it's the health ministry of Hamas. It's not, they call it of Gaza, but there are different numbers that come from different groups. Even the Palestinian Authority, that doesn't have any authority there, ironically enough, offers different numbers as well. So anyways, this whole back and forth came from basically someone turning their Twitter feed into a memo. Now, let's go to what's effectively the what kind of gets buried by this story. This is one of the ones that kind of came out, and this is originally from the Wall Street Journal, but it's behind a paywall, so I had to go to the Kiev Independent to find it. But the Hamas was invited to the Kremlin. This isn't the first time. They were, after they won in 2008. They were invited to the Kremlin as well. They've had an, interactive. They basically the leaders of Hamas are to Putin what Kim Jong-un is to Trump. But what they discovered is that this crypto exchange out of Russia called Galaxa, what's it called? Garantex, is sort of the primary money funnel that goes to Hamas. From Russia, anyways. There's obviously other ones, other groups, but they got about $93 million through the sanctioned Russian crypto exchange company Garantex, according to the Wall Street Journal. This is a story from October 13th. The sources used in the reporting alleged that Hamas likely used a similar funding scheme as a means of disguising their transactions and evading sanctions. This is how they do it. But on Garantex, you can put Russian rubles in there, and the crypto, you can take the crypto out in your local currency however you want, or in whatever currency you can have access to, essentially. And which just furthers my belief that overall crypto is simply a side currency for slavery, murder, drugs, and weapons. Yeah. that is primarily what it's for. It's just, while the rest of the world is trying to civilize itself and not let its currency be spent on the worst and the most awful, crypto is like, we don't care what we're spent for. It's none of your goddamn business. It's it's the libertarian dollar. Yeah, it was invented for that purpose, exactly. Meanwhile, let's see. Let's go to, and I'm gonna run out of time, aren't I? Because I got to set up for our dear friend Tara Dublin. But a couple of things that, yeah. All right. this is so much. All right. One of the other stories that's happening is these are my behind the scenes stories right now. Okay. So one is um, this story of, and I got to drag this over and show it to you in the way it's written out. This is in relation to the Wagner group in Africa. This is about the situation there with the Wagner crowd. And I'm sorry about the small type, but I wish I could blow it up a little bit for you. But it's a very interesting situation is unfolding in the Molkino training camp near Krasnodar. Previously, there was the main gathering point for the Wagners, and now Mirzoyansk, who is involved in the murder of the journalist Kolodov, is in charge there and is actively recruiting, forming an expeditionary force to work on the Black Continent. This is Russian reporting translated, so forgive me. Since September of this year, the recruitment of those wishing to fly to Africa has resumed because the Wagner Group had troops working in all over the place, Burkina Faso and South Sudan and all this stuff. These are the guys who roll in and you can pay them to just wipe out a village, because if anybody who's from a nearby country is, tepid about murdering their neighbors, these guys will roll in and take care of it for you. He actively conducts campaigning activities and persuades his former colleagues to accept contracts with the defense ministry, because the defense ministry has taken over Wagner, by the way. The Wagner group is not a secondary group anymore. There's no pretense of it. Putin said as much, that he created it in the first place, but now they just claim it. It might as well just, I don't even know why the fuck they say the Wagner group instead of Russia's Wagner group, or the fucking, call them the Russian Marines, because essentially that's what they're, they might as well be. Except sans honor. Promising positions entitled to all interested specialists. Volunteer contracts are immediately signed with all those who come, so they will receive payments of 110,000 rubles in salary while the detachments are being formed. Iktimnets appreciate the opportunity to receive good bonuses, blah, blah, blah. Everything started out very well. Even Deputy Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, Yanis Yekharov, came. He said that the fighters would work in the conditions as close as possible to those they were used to at Wagner. So they're basically going back and doing the exact same shit, just under a slightly different name. I mean, or just different leadership, because they're still calling them Wagner down there. A separate unit will be formed capable of successfully performing tasks in Libya, Syria, Mali, and Burkina Faso. That is necessary to recruit specialists who've already experienced working in Africa, and everyone will have titles and work. Everything went as he said until recently. People came, brought friends, collected documents to sign contracts, and waited for the promised salary, and then a small scandal happened. So on November 8th, Mirzoyansk came to Mall and announced that no one would receive anything. There would be no separate unit, no titles, no positions. Everyone will go to Burkina Faso to defeat terrorists, quote, to defeat terrorists and bring democracy and tranquility to the republic. I'll get Tara in here in 1 second. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. So they're sending Wagnerites under a different name to Burkina Faso. They were supposed to go to different places. They're all going to Burkina Faso to, quote, defeat terrorists and bring democracy and tranquility to the republic. Having canceled the promises of the Deputy Minister of Defense, he categorically stated that all previously promised and already distributed positions would be occupied by people whom he would bring and appoint himself. So this dude just brought his own people in and gave them the titles, and everybody who was promised a title or a position, is just now a grunt being sent there. I didn't promise you anything. All questions are not for me, was his response when everybody bitched. This is where the people got outraged. Be that as may, and Wagner money was always paid to everyone to the last penny, and no one was ever deceived. That's the idea that in Wagner, they spread it out pretty evenly. That's why he had such loyalty in his troops. They're changing it to more like the Russian military, so everybody thinks it sucks now, blah, blah, blah. Many came to the conclusion that since it started with deception, it would continue to be only deception. Many decided not to believe the tales of the would-be recruiters. On the morning of November 9, and over the next 3 days, just over 120 people left Molkino who did not receive wages and who were deceived into everything, and this is just the beginning. And the question reasonably arises, what will happen next? It is unclear how further recruitment will proceed, but word of mouth is working properly, and news of dishonesty in the leadership and expeditionary force is flying from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok. So the new version of Wagner in Africa is essentially same war crimes, less pay. Now, let me do this real quick. Hold on. Go back to me, and I'll bring in our dear friend Tara Dublin. Give me 1 second, Tara. I'll get you in here. There's so much going on, so many stories, so much. Yeah. And do that. Do this. And there she is. And I can hear her. And I will pop her.
Hi.
Hi. Give me 1 second. I'll pop you into the thing, and they'll
Hi.
be able to see and everything.
Oh,
And
cool.
it's very exciting. Obviously, lots of news. My
Is there?
favorite. Yes. Yeah. Now I haven't. It's so much so that I have not even had a chance to look at the Don Jr. stuff where he's allegedly going to roll in and save his father, by throwing
No,
himself
he's not.
on the grenade of guilt or whatever. I
No.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a second. Hold on, folks. I'll bring her in. Click through. There you go. Paste. And ladies and gentlemen, if I may. Let's see as she pops back in and make sure it works. And there she is, Tara Dublin. Look at that. How are you, love?
Hi,
Um,
friends. I'm wearing my Karma is my boyfriend shirt today.
I'm having a lovely conversation with the chat about the easy to talk about and easy to simplify Israeli Hamas conflict.
Sure.
Meanwhile,
Basic.
yeah.
Even a child can understand.
Sure. And the nice thing about it is that while you're talking about one part of it, people don't what about another part of it in an effort to subvert any conversation that will hopefully solve the one thing you're working on.
It's not like you have to compartmentalize or manage a whole bunch of different bits of information to quantify your argument for any reason.
It's quirky that way, that whole thing, And I think ultimately it boils down to, I think for a lot of us, yourself included, that there are no magic rocks. That the whole earth is magic or none of it is, and we better get to treating it right, and instead of arguing over, because those arguments about shitty pieces of land, the least shitty piece of land in an area, are going to get more stark over time if we don't clean up our act as human beings. I think that's the irony. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I recommend everybody take the time to watch Last Week Tonight this week, because John Oliver dedicated a very significant amount of this week's show to the conflict, and pointed out, basically gave a history lesson, because a lot of he's like, I'm not school, even though people treat me like school. But you can actually learn a lot while you're being entertained. And I even people who are paying attention always can learn more.
Hey, but the basic,
we're all supposed to be trying and learning and evolving and becoming better humans in theory. But the underlying continuing argument is that you don't have to, you can have empathy for one group being eradicated and also for another group being eradicated. You can have sympathy for civilians being blown up. You can have sympathy and empathy for children being slaughtered. 4,000 Palestinian children have been killed. These are numbers that should not be, you just shrug them off. This is horrific. And it's awful. And again, like you said, there's no magic solution. If Hamas is a terrorist organization, I don't know how you're supposed to deal with a terrorist organization, how you're supposed to negotiate with one, because they're unreasonable people. They want to destroy. They want to obliterate Israel from the map. They don't want to share.
And they also, like I said, I lay at question some of the assumptions we have taken as rote, and our kind of overgeneralization with language that is inadequate to describe the circumstance.
Exactly.
Again, the idea that Hamas using their own people as human shields. My question of whether the Arabs that consider themselves Hamas, or the Muslims, or the Islamic Jihad, or whatever, actually give a goddamn about Palestinians and don't consider themselves that, just want to wipe out Israel, and that's their landing point to do it. And so they're not thinking even of, we're using our own people as human shields. We're using those people as human shields. Imagine that, like the Sunni and Shia conflict is one that people are sort of aware of, that these are a minor divergence in religious philosophy, by American and Western standards, to the link of like Lutheran versus Presbyterian, right? It's an absurdity. If the Lutherans and the Presbyterians were trying to murder each other all the time, it would just be considered madness on our, in our worldview, right?
We've had this discussion. It's all madness to me.
But again, in the meantime, but I don't know that. I think, imagine, if you will, the best analogy I can make is imagine that the Hamas are Shia and the Palestinians are Sunni, but they have just managed to work their way in and go, we'll just use the Sunni as our cover to do whatever the hell else we want to do. And that's a crucial part of the argument.
Well,
Yeah.
and you're also talking about an organization with zero regard for human life if they're using their own soldiers for suicide bombing, which is how they got their foothold to begin with. I mean, they began their reign of terror with suicide bombings. And one of the clips that John Oliver showed on his show this week, there's like the leader, one of the main leaders of Hamas has been so super radicalized now because back in they first originated, they were like, we're not a terrorist organization. We want to coexist peacefully. We want to do this. We want to do that. We're not here to do this. We're not. And now he's like, we want to eradicate Israel from the world. And it's just, so they came in under false pretenses and people crying and screaming for a ceasefire, keep forgetting that there was a ceasefire and Hamas violated the ceasefire. And there is every reason to believe they will violate
even his
ceasefire.
statements. Even his statements, I'd have to watch the John Oliver thing to get the characterization for myself.
And
but the idea that
really strongly urge everyone to do
I
that.
will. Absolutely. Yeah. And I like John. I appreciate what he does.
But I would say his staff is incredible.
Yeah. The idea though that this guy had a change of feeling about this, that he got radicalized when right after October 7th, they came out and said this was always a rope-a-dope. We didn't mean it at all. And matter of fact, this all started, a lot of this decision for them to do what they did on October 7th and just go for it can be directly related to Trump's whole thing about Jerusalem and the Golan Heights and basically them saying, oh, fuck, here it comes. That if Trump wins again, he's just going to, and believe me, he will. If Trump wins again, if he got in, and he won't, but if he got into office again, his pissing contest with Netanyahu would be on the side. He would still want to be known by a certain group of right-wing, psychotic, uber Christians who need all the Jews in one place so Jesus can wipe them out from Armageddon when he shows up. That nonsense,
How loving. It's so loving. It's all about love of your fellow man.
Well, yeah. I mean, believe me, there are like Talmudic Jews that believe that all the Christians have to be wiped out too. It's the Abrahamic religions are adorable, but and again, nobody's right.
It's all cults. It's all cults. Because we
all everyone is welcome to their own unique mistake, and there's no way God can fit inside the human corpus callosum. And when we try, that's when we get in trouble. But essentially, this idea that they made this decision when Trump set them off. He was like, all right, we're signaling a shift in American, the whole thing that's been based around this idea of a two-state solution where it'll be a balanced thing. We're walking a very fine line all the time. He just fucking stepped right over it, as he does. No regard for the consequences. And everybody was like, they said it was going to be on fire, and then it wasn't immediately, and everything was fine. Like, no, they dug in and they decided this is the big push. I mean, like you could say arguably that like post World War I at the Treaty of Versailles, the Nazis, would have gotten all mad that they lost this territory and fought back immediately. And they didn't for about a decade. And then holy shit, right? That, like, it's silly. It's the same argument that he was making about Nazis post World War I and Hamas post him handing over the Golan Heights and recognizing Jerusalem and moving the embassy and banging that fucking gavel all over the goddamn place and essentially sending his Jewish son-in-law, making a big play of it, to make deals with Arab countries at the expense of the Palestinians, very distinctly. Saudi Arabia, Iran's, opposite is the one that's going to join under, was going to join under Biden in the extension of this idea. But Qatar, the UAE, these are not aligned with Iran, and that was the tipping point. That was when he was like. That's when they said, okay, we've got to plan something really bad. And once we start, we're never going to stop. Yeah.
What do you, I mean, this isn't what you're talking about, but the fact that you brought up Jared, what do you think that maybe Trump put him in that position because he was hoping he would maybe get the Khashoggi treatment because he's so jealous and hates Jared so much?
No, I think he went, I think it's way dumber than that. I think it's just...
even dumber than that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I think it's just
because they all hate
in
each
his
other.
mind.
So you know,
it all boils down to where's my African American. Like
right.
that's how he thinks about stuff. Like that. All right. This is why he thinks electric cars will be the end of the U.S. automaking industry. And the reason he thinks this is because he thinks of a mechanic as a grease monkey under a hood, right? That's like he has this idea of like character actors on a Law and Order episode who are, you know, out on bail, and then the cops show up and go, hey, we're looking for Sam Jenkins, and then the guy just takes off running, and they have to throw him up against the wall while he's working illegally in a fucking chop shop or some shit. Like, that's, he thinks mud on the face, but I mean, these people have been working side by side with fucking robots since the 90s. Most of them, it's been high-tech work for a long time. It's going to continue to get more high-tech. These people aren't stupid, but he looks at auto workers as dumb.
Well, I mean, every accusation is a confession, and also look how he treats the military. Look what he did on Veterans Day, and his base is still like, yep, that's my guy. Yep. He shows up at the UFC looking like a racer head, and he's like, and he's doddering, and he's basically about to fall over, and he's just.
Oh, but I will say this: I would do a very big distinction. On his own, he's got these pissant little gatherings. He shows up at UFC where people are already testosterone peaked out to start with. They're all on fucking Monster, just, you know, guzzling Monster like fucking Popeye and spinach, right? So they're jacked up. They're ready to get their testosterone on, like, right? And this and he walks in with what, Kid Rock, the UFC head, like 3 other people with him. It wasn't him by himself. Don Jr.,
a real collection
Tucker
of
Carlson.
Yeah,
right. It was like a gang of assholes, and they were like, "Look, all the assholes!" Like you could argue half the audience was like, "Look at all the assholes getting together," and then the other,
Bill
part
Burr's
of it is just like,
sure did.
Yeah, right. Like fucking Tucker. Right.
I mean, again, not my crowd, but if I happened to be there and that fucker showed up, I would do more than just this. I mean, the fact that she showed that much restraint, wasn't screaming the entire time, like, fuck you, you fucking criminal, like a anarchy princess who showed up behind Peter Navarro with the sign, and also she like yelled at Matt Gaetz on a street corner in DC. That would be me. He doesn't deserve any peace. I mean, obviously more people there are going to be his people than not, but the fact that like Bill Burr and his wife were like, fuck that guy. I love that. You know, more resistance like that, please.
Right. And I will say, the irony is that to some degree, Trump is a human troll, and we know this about him. But he seems to get a little bit of pleasure, at least he used to, from people he thinks are the right people shitting on him. Like if he makes the right people angry, that's the troll mentality. I know how well I'm doing because you hate me. And now he's so fucking delicate. He can't take criticism from fucking anybody. But on top of that, he can't even enjoy that. You look at his fucking face when he's walking out in that, he starts doing his little side thing because he's so worried that what happens when all these people wake up to me being full of shit? That's a fucking scary notion. That is a fucking scary notion in a room like that. Tucker isn't worried about that. Kid Rock doesn't give a fuck. He's been bullshitting people forever, and they like him for it in the same way, but he's younger and whatever. We'll see when he gets doddering if he still has the same issue. But Trump knows he's on fucking, like, it's like he's always walking on an old waterbed. Like, like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's great. That's
trying to walk. It's like an old man trying to walk on a waterbed to get to the phone in a hurry. Like his whole life right now is just like this. And he just.
And no one's helping him. Nobody.
No.
And he thinks Junior's going to save him in court. They've all been criming together. So if he doesn't take the fifth for every question and he doesn't perjure himself, he's not going to make things better for daddy. He's going to make it worse. So, you know, Thanksgiving's going to be hella awkward at Mar-a-Lago. Just everybody hates each other.
Wait, you don't actually think they get together, do you?
I mean,
like I swear to God,
who gets together in that? Like, I would love to know, is Trump going to be sitting alone with like a half frozen turkey TV He-Man dinner?
Yeah,
sitting there like
Tom Cruise in Risky Business, the first night his parents left town, where he eats the frozen dinner with a fork and it's frozen still, and he's just
yes, and he
sucking
ends up
on the
sucking
Salisbury
on it.
steak.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Or just like the corn is in the brownie. Just something
Yes.
that's wrong with it, and he's alone, and his Diet Coke is warm because
Well,
Walt is away with his family.
Oh, poor Waltina. Yeah. Well, that brings us to his sister passing away, which I don't know that
and that's
he
why
has.
wrong Trump is trending, because Twitter.
Oh, ouch!
Because the wrong Trump died.
Here's the thing. Let me tell you. Both my parents, like my other uncle on my dad's side is having a rough go of it, and so if he's my dad's younger brother, and if he goes, because we lost my aunt when I was in high school in a car accident. So my dad will be the last of the siblings. In his nuclear family, he'll be the last one alive. My mom just lost her brother, her older brother, and that was her last sibling. My aunt passed away 4 years ago now, and maybe 5. Jesus, time flies. And so my mom is the last of her siblings, and both of them are, my dad's 81 and my mom's in her her late 70s. I won't tell her age because she's a lady and I wouldn't do that to her. But she looks great, and they're both doing pretty well considering. But emotionally, I can tell that two things happen when you lose all your siblings from age. It's one thing when if there was an accident or something, like the kind of trauma that happened to, I would say, Hunter and Bo, for example.
Right.
Something happens when you're young and it's whatever. Or somebody who loses their siblings, in a car accident and they're the only survivor or whatever. That's a different emotional bag that you carry around, full of rocks for the rest of your life. But when you age out of them and you're the last surviving one, there's an inevitability that creeps up in your thinking, whether it's true or not. I mean, both my parents are probably going to live past 100 because they're crazy, and I certainly hope so. And every day they're around, it's a blessing.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, but I know it weighs probably more on my mom's a nurse, so she's always been super practical. But my dad, it definitely is on his mind. It's definitely on his mind, and
probably once you turn that over to the 8, when the first number of your age is an 8, I think, that's the time where you're just like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy every day I'm here.
Right. And do I care? Do I believe, honestly, that Trump has some sort of emotional connection to his sister dying all of a sudden that he didn't have before? I don't necessarily get that from him. He doesn't seem to. He seems to be so self-involved that I don't know, like the way he talks about his brother is like, it sounds like he's talking about a stranger. Shit, he talks about his kids like they're strangers. So I can only imagine his like adult, elderly, like there's a baby boomer thing of, and I'm sure it happened in other generations, so I'm just aware of it in that crowd, where some people resent others for growing old because it makes them look bad. You know what I mean? People in their generation, like you know what I'm talking about? And Trump himself it looks like he would think of his sister that way. That's just how he comes across as a person.
Well, I mean, and she was, 86, so she's significantly older than he is because he's 77. So that's enough of an age gap where he might, and so he's the last surviving sibling of them. Is that what it?
I believe so.
I mean, first of all, I don't.
Yeah.
I think for someone who's so toxically narcissistic, he might be like, of course I outlived them. Of course I'm the best one. Like he might. So, I don't know.
You listen to him from watching him talk. Yes,
he doesn't have any self-awareness. So
no. Here's the thing. I think there are moments, even the boldest human being, when they have a senior moment, as a matter of fact, it makes it worse. I would argue most of us will ride through our senior moments at times. If you have any sense of humor about yourself, you have any kind of, you've got a close friendship base. You have, he has one more sister. Thanks, Mary Steiner, for pointing that out. So
thank you, Mary.
Yeah. So, most of us who have any ability at self-reflection have the ability to do that. We have the ability to kind of just relax into, I don't care. You get old, this shit happens.
Exactly.
But if you're such an egomaniac and you've been, and you've been bullshitting people your whole life about your mental acumen and your skill and all this stuff. You're already watching for every slip up. That's why that's why the fucker has to golden crust everything. Because if you see, the fraying around the edges, it's a panic attack because they pull that thread, man, we're all going down. And so I think there are certain moments where he gets that he gets a pain in his leg, or he stands up too quickly and gets like a palpitation because he's old and snorts Sudafed and Adderall and shit like that, and eats garbage, and you know what I mean? Which you're gonna have. I got news for you. People have them all during their life. My son, he's my beautiful, wonderful, fantastic boy. One time, I think he was 9. He was like, "Oh my God, my back is killing me," and I was like, "That's so hilarious," because he was acting out. I think both his back did hurt because he'd been playing like VR or something like that, and he literally like just thrown himself all around the room like a maniac, and he was just exhausted the next day. He's growing and all kinds of stuff, and so it happens. But his mental thought about it was, he sounded like an old man. He's like, my back, my back, which
you shouldn't know.
You do that your whole life. Everybody, think back to the last time you're like, God damn, I think my eyes are going. People say that in their 20s.
Literally all day, every day. After
right, exactly.
50. Come on.
Sure. And then, but Trump has never allowed himself to even, when those things float in, they are signs of weakness and fear and have to be driven out. And then when you can't outrun them, when you stand up and you have that, oh God, what was that? Most of us recover from it fairly quickly because we can do a real assessment. We don't have to bury it because of ego or hide from it or any of that shit.
Right.
But he's literally in the worst fucking position you can be as an old man who was never great looking to begin with, who was convinced he was hot, which is so fucking weird. Right? And now that he's out over his skis and so fucking aware of it, he's, it's God.
And he's making a lot of mistakes in these latest speeches. He can't remember who leads which country.
Sioux City. He
doesn't know.
City. How many people are from Sioux City? Sioux City. So shitty.
Or
Surf
City. Am I in Surf City? Here we come.
Won't play Sun City.
Jan and Dean and Jan, great couple. I mean, first of all, and I think we touched on this last week, but I think the more he sundowns, people need to stop. I don't care what his plan is. I don't care. I keep saying, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. You're going to do fuck all for fuck nobody. You're not going to do shit.
Yeah.
You know why? Because you're going to be either sitting in or avoiding a courtroom for the rest of your miserable sundowning existence, you fucking rapist, traitorous, criminal. Let's completely keep pushing the fact that the man was arrested 4 times this calendar year alone. And again, you can be in a cult all you want. Somebody gets arrested 4 times. Perhaps that should give you pause on whether or not you should continue to support that person. But again, these people aren't the strongest thinkers. It's just but stop normalizing. Yesterday on Meet the Press, we have Kristen Welker saying, it was a rough week again for the Democrats. Excuse me, fucking what? We had an awesome election day. And please don't tell me it was bad for Joe Biden. Shut your entire whole mouth if you can't report the news correctly.
Right.
Seriously.
It's so weird.
I'm so fucking frustrated. I still don't have a job in politics. I still don't have a job. I still don't have a job writing for anybody. But I could say to Kristen Welker right now, Democrats had an amazing Tuesday. And it really showed the entire United States of America that people are really tired of Republicans' bullshit. And women especially are like, you're going to do what with our bodies? Fucking no, you're not. Moms for Liberty got shut down. All of that shit got shut down.
And
I think
and it wasn't like they learned their lesson. There would be one thing if there was I think Sean Hannity was like, we got to do something else. This isn't working. But everybody else was like, you know what our problem was? We weren't louder, We need to be louder and more sexist. That was our problem. We tried to dial back the
No,
sexism, and it didn't.
no,
And we got to really, we need to drive out the bass by being
no.
more disgusting towards women. It's so
How about
fucked up.
how about the Ohio Republicans where they're like, we don't like the way people voted, so we're just going to ignore it.
Oh yeah.
They didn't like the fact that the people of Ohio used their civic their right to vote to say, no, you may not take away our right to abortion. In fact, we're going to keep it, thanks. And Ohio Republicans are like, nah, we don't like your ideas, we don't like your votes. Like, that's illegal. That's what the people voted for. Sorry, you don't get to overturn votes you don't like, Republicans. It doesn't work that way.
So I heard this week in my horrible diet of right-wing media that I have to go through for this job.
Oh
I
my
heard
God.
something. There occasionally I hear the Glenn Becks and their ilk say things that they say with trepidation, nervousness, anger, even that I'm like, oh good, oh that's a good sign. And one of them is that Ben Shapiro, who I believe I want to say this was he was at Cambridge or something like that, I forget. But at one of these talks he was having, recently, majority of it was about the Israeli-Hamas war and blah blah blah. But to other people, people come up and ask questions or whatever, and they were like, "What about he's one of the never Trumpers. He's one of the areas where like Ben Shapiro isn't fucking psychotic. It's not because he doesn't want what Trump wants. He just doesn't think Trump can get it because Trump's an idiot, and that doesn't make him a good person. I'm just saying.
No, Ben Shapiro's a horrible person.
Yeah,
we don't claim him in the tribe.
And he couldn't stop dunking on himself about not being able to pleasure a woman by like all these accidental jokes, which were just I'm like, why is no one pointing out?
He wants to bang his own sister, so it's so disgusting. Weird. Oh my God.
Well, maybe then I don't know why he doesn't like Trump, because there's a certain level of like inter-family whatever.
They're just all disgusting.
He brings up one point. He goes, there is a rejection by the voters. He was kind of talking about the Tuesday thing. There's a rejection by the voters of the extremity of the Republican Party, and he was kind of dealing with that and how they get around it, because he views himself as pro-life, blah blah blah, for Orthodox religious reasons or what have you. But he said the reality is that the vast majority of the middle is rejecting extremity right now. And he goes, first party to sanity wins next year. That's his assessment of where things are going. And that he was saying that because it worried him about Republicans' choices next year. Not because that's a good thing that people should make sane choices, but that ultimately is going to fuck up Republicans' chances to maintain the Senate and the House next year, and certainly
they're not
gain
going
the presidency.
to.
Right.
They're not going to. As long as they keep not doing their jobs, they're not going to win.
Fucking cue. Republicans everywhere. It was so funny. Like, the other videos I'm watching are all of them going, we just didn't let people know how important an absolute ban on abortion and contraception should be. I'm like, you motherfuckers are incapable of learning. It's just
they believe whoever's loudest is right, and that's not how the world works.
No,
really not. So I would posit that the voters of Ohio were the loudest, and they said very loudly and definitely, and said, here's what we want. We're telling you with our votes what we want. You have chosen to not listen to us because it goes against what you want. Sorry, your job is to do what we elect you to do, what we vote for. That's what you do with the taxpayer dollar salary that you get. So you're working for us. You don't like it, quit. And we'll find other people who want to do it, Joe Manchin. So can we find a Democrat in West Virginia? Is there one? Is there a real Democrat anywhere in West Virginia? Not a centrist, not somebody who lives on a houseboat, but a real Democrat who's going to work with the Democrats? No.
Well, yes. Here's the thing. Joe Manchin worked with the Democrats most of the time. That is a reality that we have to deal with. We can want all the unless there's a big migration of people to fucking West Virginia from big cities and areas around universities and the like, of blue voters who all of a sudden want to fucking farm, you're not going to see that. And so
I
I got
mean,
to
it
tell
could
you,
be a very idyllic life, nice and quiet.
oh, they're all going to Montana. That's what's worrying Montana. Montana's the next big shift.
Is that really?
Yeah, Montana's easier to overtake, and it's where all like the tech billionaires and their surrounding factions are all moving to, and they're all socially very, you know, liberal, and so they tend to vote that way in general. It will there's going to, one of the biggest fears about rural broadband that everybody was, you know, that on the right was freaking out about, and why they were kind of against it, and why it ultimately became a good sales point, you're welcome, for the infrastructure bill, was the fact that remote workers, who in general are much more socially liberal and open-minded and family-oriented for real, might move to these quote-unquote red states with about 460,000 fucking people in them and tilt the scales, because those places are still only 60-40 Republican.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? When they're like, it went 60 to whatever for, you know, for Trump over Joe Biden. Well, 20% of 400,000 people ain't a fucking lot. It ain't. And we think about it like it's fucking California, where you're talking about you'd have to move millions of votes to have a shift. You don't have to fucking do that. 80,000 people that moved to Montana and Homestead, for fuck's sake, that work remotely for insurance companies and tech firms and shit like that, could absolutely shift. And that's where a bunch of people are going. That's, you know, all the talk about people moving to Texas and Florida, the vast majority of people who like left California, Oregon, Washington State, for example, didn't go to Western or Eastern Washington State, because that's where all the awful is. They went even further. They went, you know, into these areas. So there is a real concern that you know, big tech migration is going to have a major impact on the big rural red states.
Well, that makes sense, because the Republican Party fears an educated population.
Right.
Because if anybody who can find out for themselves what's actually going on instead of just absorbing it from Fox News, somebody who didn't have access to broadband all of a sudden does, and can find out all of the stuff that they were pulling. So the combination of wanting to get rid of public education or defund the education department and not give them broadband is an obvious sign that the GOP is really trying hard to keep as many people uneducated and obedient to them as possible, so they can keep pushing their hate agenda, and that way they can take the PragerU curriculum and throw it into schools in states like Oklahoma and Florida and start indoctrinating them and all of that, and it's going and spreading like a virus of its own.
Well, so, and the irony is that there's plenty of that, you know, Trump just launched his America University idea, where they're going to like sue private universities with sue the endowments for them. What the fuck are you talking about? And use that
and
money.
Then Trump is going to live on the moon with Curious George, and they're all going to live. I mean,
they're all going to have a thumb sucking contest, and he'll always win. Right?
There's a fuck what he says. Anything that he says is a fucking lie to cover, lie to cover his ass, to keep his base mad.
Like that was supposed to be a fucking story. Like imagine making a giant announcement. That sounds like something like Santorum or somebody dropped, and everybody's like, yeah, but no, that's never gonna happen. He's never gonna be president. Who gives a rat's ass about that? Like, they're treating all of Trump's shit that same way. The only things that you keep hearing about is the stuff that makes room, which is, I'm gonna bomb fucking Mexico. And the number of assholes.
Get rid of all the brown people. There's not gonna be zero tolerance. We're gonna do this and now he's starting to use the word vermin in his speeches, which is super for the Jews out here who aren't already getting annihilated on social media. And I mean, there's like 5 people that are invested in letting Linda Yaccarino know that there's actual anti-Semitism going on Twitter. She's too busy, you know, courting favors with Paris Hilton and Louis Vuitton. So it's just, we really, again, the anti-Semitism, like, we've talked about this. We talked about what happened to me at the Halloween party, but the fact that it's going so unchecked, and that it's just allowed, and that there's there's an account with over 1 million followers, a paid account with over 1 million followers that I tweeted to Linda that was tweeting some really horrific anti-Semitic, kill the Jews kind of shit. And nothing happens. Nothing happens. And so it's the red meat that they keep throwing to the MAGA base and keep hating the Jews. It's all the Jews' fault. Jew. And that propaganda and that not enough people are pushing back against is I'm very, very concerned about getting the truth. The truth matters to me more than anything, right? But like this stuff is really starting to scare me to the point where like I'm grateful that my name isn't so obviously Jewish at first and that people can get acclimated to my Jewishness and not hit me with it right away, because it's really like people are just leading with it. And it's
well,
I posted. Go ahead.
I was just saying I think it's sad that you would even have to have that thought, and I'm sorry on behalf of my fellow humans that you have to go through that, because no one should have to hide what their name is. Ask John Leibowitz, who became Jon Stewart.
Jon Stewart.
That was a thing that was happening for a long time. And again, even with Trump, everything's a fucking reboot. None of these assholes can come up with something. With all the UFO talk, you'd think we'd have something new to worry about, but it's just the same old Elders of Zion horseshit that we've had forever.
It worked for Hitler. So I reported.
Did it though? He ended up, as Eddie Izzard said, in a pit covered in petrol with his brains blown out. So I'm just saying.
No, but before he got there, he did some good things, is what people will tell you. And the tweet that I reported over and over again said something like, why don't people really pay attention to Hitler's speeches? He said a lot of good things. He said this, he did this for the markets, he did that, and like they just let it go.
They're parroting Trump. That's the
and
stuff
he's using the word vermin. So expect to see more of that. Expect to see more of the Hitler Youth propaganda being spilled into the mainstream. And you were talking about Telegram right before I joined you.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. I mean, I have not gone on any of those sites. I mean, I've seen screenshots and I know how terrible it is. And if someone says that they're on Telegram, and I know that you have to be, because you're watching the conversations there and you're paying attention to that. And I'm grateful for you and those people like Patriot Takes and people who watch as closely and share those as closely, so that people are like, this is real. This is really what's happening. This is really what's going on. What's terrifying is that when you have a situation like Telegram, where it's so many people just like attaboying each other for who can be the best hater, who can say the worst thing. And then that spills over into the real world. The question is what we are going to do about it. Because we need to do something. We can't be passive about it, but we also can't endanger ourselves at the same time.
Yeah, there's, there are a couple of issues that socially, and I understand that my philosophy about this diverges from sort of mainstream thought about these things for a while. But I equate some elements of racism beyond the just report and block and move on aspect of things, that racism as a social contagion works very much like suicide, in that, ironically enough, the more you talk about it, the more happens. That every time we have a story about some major person doing themselves in, or that TV series that came out that was about the girl and she
the 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah,
very hard to watch. I couldn't.
Yeah, instead of opening up a conversation and leading to more conversations where people didn't do that, it was directly tracked to a bunch of people doing it and leaving reference to it in their goodbye note. And racism is to some degree the same kind of thing. Because like racists are like, they're like, and no deference, in all deference to dogs, they're like dogs. They don't care if you're calling them their name because you want them to come or stay or whatever. They just hear their name and that's the attention. So they come no matter what. If you go, if you're like, Sam, stay over there, Sam will come running if he doesn't know stay over there. He'll just, because he heard his name. And to some degree, the cry of racism is like a dinner bell for these fuckers. And they feel like, if you look on things like Instagram or even on Twitter, where I a vast majority of, it's so full of fucking bots. it's ironic beyond measure that, you know, and by the way, I'm talking about social conversation, not interpersonal conversations about these issues. I think interpersonal conversation is very important, but blathering about them in the news oftentimes is what tends to bring them forward, including someone, you know, unaliving themselves, as they euphemistically call it on YouTube. Talk to your friends and your loved ones about that. Reach out about them. But that's why they always reference it that way these days. That's why that language is in stuff. If you or a friend is dealing with it, they either have the hotline or they say talk to people if talk to someone. That's because that's where it works. Because just watching it baits into it. Right. Same thing. Because the thought starts to haunt you a bunch if you're already have the ideation.
Right.
Racism, very similar. And racists take very few people existing around them who are fellow racists to feel supported. You and I, to feel support, we have tens of millions, hundreds of millions, if not billions of people on our side in terms of women's rights, gay rights, all these other things. But if two people show up on Twitter and shit on it, we're like, what the fuck is the world coming to? The whole world's burning down. These assholes run the place, and it's ridiculous. Meanwhile, if a racist, you know, or if we say something that's like, you know, I don't know, pro-peace or for women's rights or whatever, and you get 80 responses on your Twitter, in your feed or whatever, when you normally get more, you're like, oh, damn, why don't people care about this? Why don't more people care about this, right? It affects you. But if a racist dickhead loner in the middle of fucking nowhere gets 80 hits on his social media post, suddenly he's got 80 friends strategically spread out across the fucking country that he never knew he had before. So the you know, that's the downside of social media, of social interaction, is that these people are creating networks they never had before. So it's a tricky area about how much we give it weight in our fear of it and our mocking dismissal of it. And it's a balance you have to walk with each singular one. And it's one of the things that if you're not Jewish and you're listening to the sound of my voice, you have more ability to do than the Jews who are at the impact of it right now. It's one of the reasons why men can mock other men who go after women's rights easier than women can online. And that's why I think we have a responsibility to do it.
All I've always said is that we have a responsibility as humans to be allies for each other, and especially towards the communities we weren't born into. And not enough people can see outside of themselves to put that into practice. I'm not, you know, and I can fight with the best of them and I can throw it around, but I also don't wake up every day going, who can I piss off today? Who can I go after today? I'm more of a reactionary person where I'm just like, I don't like that. And I'm going to say to you why I don't like it. I'll use some strong language to get your attention to why I don't like it, because here's the truth of why I don't like it. And to me, going back to the normalization of the fact that we have a whole bunch of traitorous insurrectionists in Congress right now, and it's going to take a lot of voting to get them out of our Congress. The normalization of that, the normalization of Trump's plan for 2024, the normalization of Jim Jordan ducking a congressional subpoena for a year and a half, the normalization of Marjorie Taylor Greene getting to say anything on the House floor. All of that, like, I'm exhausted from having to tell people how abnormal it is. And like, the tide pushed us this far. We can collectively push back. And we also have to remember, most of the American voting population is not on Twitter. They're not. They don't see the shit we see. They don't hear the shit we hear.
Which is what, again, goes to what I'm talking about.
They're not caught up in it. And that's what you were saying. And so when we see it, like, you see a bot, if somebody responds to you and their handle is Jim Patriot 735721544, and they just joined Twitter a month ago, that's not a real account. Or that's their name and they joined in June of 2010, but they have 25 followers and 4 tweets. What I would recommend, like, for those of us who are going to stay and fight, because I'm staying and fighting, I'm not, I'm not giving up. We're going to be fighting over the last floating door. I'm there till the end, unless somebody wants to come along and help save it. Just don't respond. There are ones you can respond to that make sense. Like, you can find out they're a human being and you can interact with them if they're a member of Congress, particularly, or they're someone in a position of influence. But I would say that part of this, I mean, they're created to waste our time. They're
Yes.
created to take our attention away from the truth and away from the facts and away from the news and move the goalposts so that our
One of
original,
the
whatever they
yes.
came for us for, isn't what we're talking about anymore. And I got so, all you have to do is pay attention because
Yes.
it's they all do it the same way. And if you don't buy into the way they play the game, they get tired of playing with you because you're not
Right.
playing with them. And they take their toys and they go elsewhere, they block you or whatever.
Right.
So if you learn how to be in the resistance, because I think it's time to bring that back. Hashtag the resistance. We have 11 films back in the game, and they are devoting the rest of like the whole year to fighting against all of the fascism and all of the racism and the anti-Semitism and all of the other isms. Keep
Mhm.
pushing back, and as a collective, we'll find each other. Keep using the hashtag the resistance on Twitter so that we can find each other and help protect each other and boosting the truth.
Yeah.
At least you'll know how to find it instead of
Well,
getting swept up in the bullshit, and you can find the truth. That's one way to keep it
yeah,
like
and
a,
to
a
the
real
point I was trying
conversation.
yeah, and to the point I was trying to make, and
Mm.
about that kind of relates to what you're saying about most people aren't on Twitter, for example. Most of them are on Facebook, quite frankly. But
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
even
they are,
still,
especially Gen X and older.
yeah. But most of because most people aren't on Twitter, some of the times when we play up or deal with what is on Twitter, we create the illusion of this subculture that has legs for the rest of the society, that oh my god, there are a lot of racists out there or whatever, or they might be the winning team or what have you. And again,
Right.
it's like the argument about climate change. You have to watch your language about it because you don't want to drive the average person who's not ate up with it to smoke them if you got them. You
Right.
don't want to get them to the point, well, fuck it, I can't do anything about it, and they stop recycling. There was this study done around Greta Thunberg's activism, that the more people became aware of her, the less they recycled. They literally were like so aware. They're like, because she was like, we're dead in 10 years, essentially, was her
Oh,
argument.
and so
And
they
so,
were like, fuck it, let's not try.
well, yeah, they were like, well, I can't
Yeah.
do anything. There's no solving it. We're already past the point that the only option I have is to maybe, I don't know, not have kids or drive us all off a cliff. It's very weird. Like but they drove them into smoke them if you got them instead of
Right.
solving it. And
Right.
that's, I think, crucial to all these arguments. Why I stay positive about it, not just because I actually believe what I'm saying, but also
Mhm.
like I convey that optimism, and why I work to linguistically convey it to people in different ways so they can kind of absorb it and know that I'm not just selling, Pollyanna, but I'm actually going, no, this is what can be done. These are the solutions so you can keep people off that fucking ledge
Yeah.
of smoke them if you got them. And the same thing is true of racism online and sexism and that kind of stuff. Is this idea that and I see this a lot in how I guess online lefties and what I would say the faux aggressive crowd, when they talk about racism, they talk about it as so ubiquitous that if you're a black person, it's hard. I can't imagine what it must be like if you subscribe to their thinking that every person you meet that isn't black wants you dead or gone. And to live in that zone of distrust, that to me is cruelty. It is like, we always make that case about like Trump and or Putin in Ukraine being the boyfriend who abuses the girlfriend. Without me, you're nothing, or you'll die without me, or if if I can't
Right.
have you, no one will. Kind of a zone of thinking that there's an idea in that if hey, I'm the only one who likes you, everybody else secretly hates you, even if they pretend to like you, they're
Yeah.
out to get you. There is a level of cruelty to that. Somebody's saying like TYT with cops. Exactly. I like
Well, and
TYT does this
also
more than
he's
anyone.
doing that with the Latino community now. He's
Yes.
actually pitting them against each other within their own community
Right.
to
Well,
divide them because he hasn't done enough division in this country already. Now he has to go within the groups that are, some of them are supporting him, but the ones who aren't cool and macho enough to be MAGA. And so
right.
he's trying to divide the Latino community over him. Like, again, take a really good look at a recent photo of him. Look at him at UFC. With the nest of weevils on his head, and he's teetering, and his thumb is like almost all the way backwards now. And I don't just
Mhm.
how does anyone still see him as, oh yeah, there's a pillar of strength.
Yeah, one of the things I kept seeing was like, because Bongholio was there with
was he?
And he was taking pictures with everybody. He had dozens of pictures. They had pictures with Tucker and all this stuff. And he was like, "Here's trouble." All of his things were like, "Uh-oh, look out!" It was like,
I wouldn't know. I've been blocked by him
like,
since 2015.
Yeah, me too. So. But I saw it on other sites. But the irony was, like, he was acting like a sorority sister with like a baseball hat with beers on the side of it. Like, uh-oh, who's ready to party? Like the whole thing. But he didn't. I think he had one picture of him and Trump, even though they were all in one area, and Trump looks like he's doing the scared smile.
You're like
that kind of like, where am
I? No. Pawpaw doesn't know where he is.
Everybody there who was with him was taking pictures with everybody else who was there, but not him. And it was like they were avoiding him on purpose because it didn't look good.
And also it ruins their meme game, because then if they take a real photo with him and post it, then they can't post a meme of him in a tank top with big old muscles and a six-pack with an eagle on his shoulder sitting next to Jesus, or whatever their bullshit is. They can't post real photos of him, so they Photoshop a cartoon of his head on Rocky's body and says, "Here's my president." What is that?
Right. So what
are we looking at?
Yeah, this is the video of him entering the UFC. And watch his face at the beginning. He's like, he starts waving, and then he's like, "Hey, hi,
hey," and with the tie, still can't tie a tie. 77
like,
years
honest
old.
to God, he looks scared shitless.
He probably didn't even know where he's like, "Is this my rally or where are we?
Right.
What is this?"
So super.
What a big crowd for me. That's not for you, sir. They're not there just for you.
So
he probably thought they were there for him. He probably thought this was a rally. Maybe he thinks he was in Sioux Falls. I don't know.
He fist bumps this guy and goes, "Urgh," when he does it. Like,
ew,
ew.
My widow baby fit. My widow baby fit.
Like he's going, "Ooh." It's so odd. And then
a person touched me. Here, this is him.
And he's kind of
like
lumbering.
T-Rex arms.
And now, look, there's a certain group of people that like the fact that he's bored with life or whatever. And he does the fucking jerk off in my hair thing.
He's just so ew. He's so just gross. Ew.
And then he goes, "Hey, whatever." And then, but he doesn't like it. He's like,
no, he's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, and
okay,
I'm thinking like
fucking Jared Leto. He just said hi to Jared Leto.
Ew.
And Jared Leto's like, this fucking guy.
Jared Leto climbed the Empire State Building, by the way. I don't know why. He literally scaled the Empire State Building.
Talk about having a cult. Don't get me started.
I don't participate. I do not participate in that. So he looks like shit. That is the bottom line. That's your guy. Look what the fuck is on his head. Seriously, weevil's nest. That is a weevil's nest.
There's also this big drift in his hair lately that he's got.
Oh yeah,
this kind of,
like that. This like
the comb over used to go one big piece, right? It used to be this this fenderization.
But now snuck up behind him with a razor and went zit, like that, because there's like a whole lane you could drive a truck through on the back of his head now.
I gotta say, like, not happening. This is again.
Again, explain to me like I'm a child. You look at that and go, "All right, that's my guy. Oh yeah. Oh no, he's a leader. He's a born leader. He's got a plan." Really, he didn't do shit for the 4 years.
It would be a lot easier. It would be a lot easier if you believed a lot of stupid shit to start with. Then it's real easy. If you think that the southern border is open and we've got 15 million Mexican, Guatemalan, Honduran, Brazilians crossing the fucking border all the time
Soros
with
is paying
pockets
us to vote Democrat,
pockets of fucking fentanyl and everybody's got a baby for sale and all that kind of, like, you have to believe so much of this bullshit and then go, oh, okay, so I guess it's him or the guy who drinks baby juice. Oh, sorry, I have Johnny Million's name up on it. My bad. Sorry, I should.
That's all right. I need a million.
Transition over.
Johnny.
There we go. Ta-da!
I need a million for sure. Right. There I am. It's just, you guys. Let me just tell you out there, if anybody is still supporting that guy, are you a Republican or are you a Trump-publican? That's That's what it comes down to, because if you're, again, choosing one man over your country, that's called treason. And you're not supposed to do that. And country over party's not at the party. Country over party is what you're supposed to do.
There's Bongholio, and he's
still in the cult to this day. He's good. Why isn't he in prison? Shit.
And he's he's like, "What's up, my Kid Rock dude?" Yeah, like the fact that
skis. It's just nothing but skis all over the place. And Donald Trump's
and Kid Rock almost falls on somebody.
Breath. Just his mouth is all dry from nothing but Diet Coke chemicals because he never drinks water.
Bongholio's going to be very upset because they panned away just as he had his moment.
Oh,
so sad.
Oh no! Look, he still likes me. What fucking ever, man. I'm so
By the way,
tired
and
of
there's a ton of people
books.
there's a ton of people like doing this, and there's a bunch of people going, "This fucking asshole." Like,
and then there's Bill Burr's wife going,
yeah.
So I hope what we're seeing. I hope that we're. I mean, the one good thing about him constantly never being able to avoid the cameras is that we're watching his sundowning in real time, and we're watching him disintegrate and deteriorate and kind of like melt at the guys at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Eventually, he's just gonna fall back, and his eyes are gonna recess into his skull, and he's not gonna exist. One day he'll disappear, like a miracle. He'll just disappear. I live for the day we never speak his name again.
I will say there is a tremendous lack of backbench bullshitters waiting to fill the Trump gap. There's some belief that Tucker Carlson is a version of that, or what have you. But even Tucker Carlson is not as dough-headed and fucking stupid and comfortable with bullshitting himself. Like, he's got his own evil streak that is his concerning point, but he's not this kind of like dopey accidental cascade of bullshit like the Golan Heights thing that Trump, like he would leave well enough alone in certain areas just so he could get into his evil shit elsewhere, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's why they have Jesse Waters on Fox now, because he's the dumbest. So.
Yeah. Stretch Ben Shapiro.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And such a disappointment to his mother, Jesse Waters. Jesse Waters, one of his mom is a Democrat. And so when he got his primetime show and she called in, she was basically like, "Could you just be better?" She did this whole long monologue that was essentially, and the whole running theme was, "I love you, but can you just try to be better? Can you?" And he was like, "No, Mom, I just really can't. I can't. My job is to lie to America." So.
I will say this hour rushed by. Thank you, Tara Dublin, for joining me today.
Hey, buy my book.
Buy her book.
Buy
The
my
Sound
book.
of Settling.
It's on Amazon. Not that you can find it if you search it, but go.
Yes,
go
you
to
can.
my Twitter.
We just put the link in the chat and in the stuff underneath.
I have sold 316 copies, and I am on track to. I'm almost at 11,000 pages read on Kindle. So that should impress somebody who signs people to Hollywood production deals or big deal publishing deals, or at least, can I get an agent now? I mean, can I go viral? I don't know what else to do, but this is the best thing I've ever read. And I've written, also one of the best things I've ever read, because I read it again yesterday. I also tried to fix the file so that the font in the paperback won't look like this, but will actually look normal.
Well,
so
sure.
Yeah, no, just little things like that matter. And so, again, everybody, I love this more than anything. It's a rock and roll love story. It's not really political, but it's gotten 5 stars on Amazon, and everybody says they can't put it down, and they can't wait for the streaming series. So your help in manifesting that would be delightful.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on
Thank you,
our Mondays with Tara is a good time, and it's nice to develop some regulars around this joint.
I like it. I like keeping it regular. It matters.
And a little bit of programming note for everybody else. I'm filling in for Joan Esposito today on WCPT. So I'll be on for 5 hours today. So 3 hours of her show, and then my regular 2-hour show where I'll do all the swearing and stuff that I do elsewhere. But we'll be covering a lot of news today. Stuff I didn't get to because we had Tara, and because so many of these stories were enormous.
There's just a lot going on. Listen,
there's a lot going on.
Take a break, read a book. I don't know, just Treat
There is
yourself today.
so many stories. I will say so many stories, and then I'll let you go. There's so many
Okay.
stories that would be like game changing, national news for weeks. That are happening all at once, dozens of them, mainly because of coverage, the ability. Like all this shit used to happen too. We
Yeah.
just didn't hear about it. We didn't have access to it for months.
We had
Nobody,
3
nobody.
channels.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
the ability to like don't feel like wound up by this shit and going, this is new somehow on the earth. It ain't.
Yeah.
The only thing new is the fact that you have this digital window in front of you that
Right.
allows
That's
you to
showing you
see
way
this
too
stuff.
much. Yeah.
But it is not. But it is not because there's more of it. There's not more racism and murder and death and blah 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 than there ever has been in human per capita in the history of the world. There just isn't. There is not. Just telling
It's
you.
just more easily accessible for anyone
That's
who
right.
wants it.
It's just right. It's on demand, so you can doom
It's
scroll the shit
literally
out of
at
it.
your fingertips. So you
That's
have a
right.
choice. And as a Jewish American, I would ask, you see anti-Semitism, please say something. Please
Yeah,
say something. Please support your
absolutely.
Jewish friends right now, because even if you hear like a little microaggression, oh, someone Jewed you out of a quarter, or anything that's even the
Right.
slightest, speak up, because
Mhm.
it has to come from you. Like
Yeah.
someone, people who don't, and people who aren't aware of it. There are ways to check each other without ending your friendships. So I
Mhm.
think, you can have an honest conversation and you can become a better person without like saying, I can't ever talk to you again. Yes, you
Right.
can.
Right.
Speak better.
Yeah.
Speak better. That's what we're
Do
asking
better.
for.
Do better,
Have a
people.
good
That's all
week.
we
Go out
ask.
and do good
1%
things.
improvement. 1%
Support
improvement
your
every day.
struggling writer friends.
That's right. That's one of the
Check
ways
in
you
with
can
your
do it.
friends.
Awesome.
Love
Thanks so
you.
much, Tara.
Bye,
See you
guys.
later.
See you next
Everybody
week.
say
Bye-bye.
bye. Bye. There she goes. Tara Dublin rocks. Please follow her. Pick up her book if you're so inclined. Appreciate it greatly. And thank you guys for being here and being part of this, even the tough conversations. Because I will say this, and this is my own personal belief, that even the people who disagree with me about the Israel Hamas situation, for the most part, I believe you are coming from a good place. I really do believe that you want the betterment of everybody involved. And when I talk the way I talk about a bunch of these things, I am not talking about you per se. I'm not talking about your beliefs about that situation. I'm talking about a prevailing mythology outside of our conversation in it. And that's important. It's an important distinction. And we'll make that clear. Now, if you aren't one of those folks and you do believe that, the elimination of Israel is the only way to solve any of this stuff or whatever, then I am talking about you, and fuck you. You're a silly person. But I will talk to you as a silly person, and at you as a silly person, and around you as a silly person. And what you need to remember always is that if I am arguing a point with you, or I am arguing a point that you believe, then, around you or near you, there is no way that I can dehumanize you in that argument, because I think you're worth arguing with. The only time you should get nervous about my beliefs about people acting in their most animalistic way is if I think there's no conversation to be had. You know what I'm saying? I think you do. I think you do. I'll see you in about an hour.